The topic's going to be first autophagy, and then we're going to get into the extracellular matrix and go from there. So, and I'm sure a lot of you on this Zoom call know autophagy is designed to be the house cleaner, the self-eating. It cleans up all the debris, all the damage inside the cells. So it's critical so that all that damage doesn't stay in the cell and cause further issues and health issues down the road. And that's why autophagy is considered one of the hallmarks of aging, is because you can't have dysregulated or dysfunctional autophagy and be reversing your age. Plays a big role in cellular repair and regeneration. Part of the reason because it eliminates a lot of damaged parts. Along, as you're going to see in this PowerPoint, it helps also upregulate some very positive things too. And it helps play a role with molecular building blocks. We're talking about proteins, and we're talking about peptides. And the reason I bring peptides up is because what are peptides? Peptides are proteins, protein chains. And if you don't have autophagy, what happens to those protein chains is the same thing that happens to the protein in the brain. You get misfolded protein, which we'll talk about that a little more. So plays a role in energy regulation. So that's very important. Also very important in immune and inflammation response. So it does help clear out toxins and pathogens. So it's very important in that. And it also plays a role in inflammatory pathways. Recovering organ. So growing evidence shows that autophagy plays a vital role in cellular repair and regeneration, not just cleaning house, particularly recovering from organ failure caused by critical illness. So it plays a huge role in the whole process associated with regeneration too. So don't forget to think of autophagy when you're thinking of regeneration. And again, if you guys did listen in on my AGE topic, you know autophagy is beneficial for reducing AGEs, advanced glycated protein, as well as autophagy will clean up age stem cells. So stem cells age, just like heart cells age, kidney cells age. And again, it's critical because stem cells are a very, very popular topic, just like peptides are. But if they're getting damaged in the body, then what are you doing to repair them? If you have decreased autophagy and you're only dumping in more stem cells and not correcting the problem with low autophagy, high AGEs, and that type of thing, then you're gonna be taking 2 steps forward and maybe 1 step back, depending on the specifics of the person and their health issues. How does autophagy contribute to stem cell maintenance? So autophagy does play a role, and if you look at these several different points here, it's how it plays a role in protecting stem cell maintenance, and stem cell maintenance is huge. So the reason why stem cells has gotten so popular today is because all of our stem cells get damaged or they become succinate stem cells. So our own body's stem cells get beat up and get damaged from all the different chemicals, toxins, metabolic imbalances, oxidative stress, and the list goes on. Autophagy plays a role in innate and adaptive immunity, programmed cell death. So we're talking about apoptosis there. And inefficient removal of pathogens and dead cells inevitably leads to inflammation. And I think we all know this. So autophagy removes the pathogen, removes the dead cells in a non-inflammatory way. So defects in autophagy provokes autoimmune disease, provokes inflammation. I think this is interesting because I don't think we all think about autophagy when we're thinking about gut issues. And since gut issues are still at the top of the list topic in functional medicine, integrative medicine, or any kind of natural health protocols, but autophagy plays a big role in healthy intestinal epithelial function, as you'll see more specifics soon. inflammatory bowel disease, intestinal inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, and Crohn's disease, deficiency in autophagy is associated with all three of those. Obviously, autophagy has been closely linked to development and progression of type 2 diabetes. Again, if you saw either attended June and or you saw the AGE one that we did 4 weeks ago when we did that, and how much AGEs play a huge role in diabetes and how much autophagy helps decrease AGE formation as well. And also autophagy plays a big role in insulin sensitivity as well. Autophagy counteracts weight gain, lipotoxicity, and pancreatic B cell death. So we're talking about here, it plays a huge role in insulin resistance, which I don't know what your opinion is as far as the viewers here in terms of what percent of the population has insulin resistance, but I'm probably guessing it's a higher percent than maybe most of us think or not, but it's not 20 or 30%. I mean, in children, I think it's up to what, 40 or 45%, and it could be worse than that. So, but one thing you have to, what's important here is elevated insulin levels activate mTOR, and mTOR inhibits autophagy. So mTOR and autophagy are like, I don't know if yin and yang are a good way to describe it, but they're opposites. You know, parasympathetic, sympathetic. One works in a negative way in many instances. mTOR does have its benefits, particularly in muscle building, but it also, in chronic disease, mTOR is usually elevated and it will inhibit autophagy. Of course, we know that it removes cellular debris, which causes oxidative stress, and it also, autophagy triggers transcription activation, which degrades organelles and proteins. And again, when we get into that, you have to remember peptides, which peptides are a hot topic too. And it's not that we need peptides. They're critical. They're very important. But peptides are these protein chains. And if you have oxidative stress, you have decreased autophagy, they're at risk of being what's called loss of proteostasis or misfolded peptides or proteins. Therefore, and this is a statement that's stuck in my mind forever, is the shape of the protein determines its function. So when you have misfolded proteins, you're causing dysregulated function of those proteins, and that also includes peptides. So when I just saw earlier today some seminar coming up in Fort Lauderdale on stem cells and peptides, which I think are very important information that we all need to be getting and learning about. But I wish there was some emphasis being put on the fact that just getting peptide shots and stem cell shots, if you're not addressing these other components that help regulate how well those stem cells are going to be, and whether your peptide you're injecting is never going to be an ending process if you have loss of proteostasis at high levels. So I hope this is making sense, because some of this stuff I can go off on a tangent and get kind of excited about. Here's one most people don't correlate autophagy with, or probably not. Erectile dysfunction has been associated with chronic decreased autophagy. So, or it may contribute to the development and worsening of conditions. And also they have found by upregulating autophagy has been very beneficial in exacerbating erectile dysfunction. So I had to put that in there because I don't think many of us, or at least I hadn't until I did the research on this, was aware of that. Cellular sustenance. So enhancing autophagy does delay cellular sustenance, and autophagy helps regulate cellular sustenance by clearing a lot of damaged proteins and organelles, preventing the harmful effects of this accumulated cellular debris, which then contributes more and more to inflammation and cellular damage and promotes sustenance, those cells to become sustenance, which the last thing we want is sustenance cells, because they're like they're also referred to as zombie cells, meaning they literally do nothing but spit out pro-inflammatory cytokines. Cardiac autophagy is decreased with age, misfolded proteins. Inhibition of autophagy leads to exacerbated cardiac aging. When we get into the extracellular matrix, this is where decreased autophagy plays a big role as well. So when you have your clientele that has cardiovascular issues, and it could be stiffness, they never use the word fibrosis that much, except maybe in circumstances like pulmonary fibrosis, and they will in some instances like kidney fibrosis. But you have to remember, fibrosis happens even in your bone marrow, so it's a big deal. And autophagy plays a huge role in helping decreasing the likelihood of that happening, and or slowing it, and or reversing it. This is a process. So obviously, if you keep, where's the number one reason that we think of autophagy in some chronic health issues? Obviously, autophagy is well known for cleaning up misfolded proteins. And what is the number one organ in the body where misfolded proteins is associated with some of the worst diseases? Is the brain. So misfolded proteins, loss of proteostasis, what that means is misfolded proteins. You're talking about Alzheimer's, you're talking about dementia, you're talking about even Parkinson's, there's misfolded proteins. So if you have people, clientele, with signs and symptoms of any of those conditions, the likelihood of you having dysfunctional decreased autophagy on a chronic basis is highly likely. Something to think about with those particular clientele. Because Dr. Kim, what's nice, he has a beautiful formula to help induce or activate autophagy in the body. And again, here's AGE. So if you did hear the talk in June, and or you were on the Zoom call 3 or 4 weeks ago, I spent the whole time on AGEs, and autophagy really helps clear AGEs. And what are AGEs? AGEs are the biggest thing we have that we have no control over. Well, we have little control over because it is simply boils down to the client's consumption of food choices that contribute to forming AGEs, that contribute to all kinds of cellular damage. So autophagy helps downregulate that. So that's critical. That's very important. And again, nobody can tell me they're doing anti-aging programs where they're not addressing autophagy and or testing it and same thing with AGEs. What percent of the population do you think has an AGE issue? So autophagy proteins have diverse functions to benefit the host of removal of invading pathogen. So this is some of the studies, and I just did a few, but I didn't want to put these up because I like you guys to know that I do research, and it's not just my opinion here, which 90% of it is not my opinion here. So this is one where they're showing the critical role autophagy plays in immunity. Autophagy activators stimulate removal of advanced glycated end products in humans. And this is in the skin, because remember, AGEs show up in the skin big time. So what are AGEs in the skin? Those are aging spots. What are aging spots? Protein glycation, glycated protein. So if for no other reason, a lot of your female patients want to have beautiful skin. So do the AGE test if they have high AGEs, and then you test them for Dr. Kim's autophagy product and the AGE product. They have a potential to reverse that. And yes, I'm saying reverse that, which I've been taking pictures of my back of my hand where I have had AGEs, and it's lightened up significantly over the last 3 months. So this shows you the relationship autophagy has on mitochondria, because obviously mitochondria You don't want in the cells all these damaged proteins, all these damaged organelles that are supposed to clean up all this stuff so that the mitochondria can function in a healthy state. I don't know how many of you have ever considered autophagy in your client's autoimmune issues, but there are studies, and this is just one of them I'm showing you, and this comes right out of the autoimmunity journal on how autophagy plays a key role in downregulating specific autoimmune health issues. They know in Alzheimer's and dementia, there is defective autophagy, or there is dysregulation or dysfunction of autophagy, because it's all about the misfolded proteins. And if you had healthy autophagy, that would have been removing all those misfolded proteins, which would be a game changer. So chronic Alzheimer's clientele you get, you know, they've had severe chronic autophagy for years. And this goes into autophagy as it relates to aging, succinate cells, and cancer. So again, I'm just trying to show you the role that there is, and this is published in Molecular Oncology, that autophagy plays in helping to diminish the potential effects of those degenerative diseases. Autophagy activators stimulate removal of advanced glycation. So at this point, you understand this, that how autophagy maintains proteostasis. The definition of proteostasis, if you don't already know, is a folding of proteins. And when you get the damage from all the chemicals, toxins, abnormal oxidative stress inside the cell, that's when you're going to get damage and misfolded proteins. And again, as I said earlier, this includes peptides. So when you hear the latest, greatest peptide stories, what they need to have in those stories is about how the role autophagy plays with having healthy peptides, or else they're going to be one of these people that they will need peptide shots forevermore, just trying to play catch up for the damage being done due to autophagy dysregulation. I hope that makes sense and seems logical to you guys, because it's true and it's important. And do I say don't do peptides? I would not say that. I'm saying to get the best optimal benefits from them is check your AGE levels, check your autophagy levels, and of course, cellular succinate levels as well. One of the things about proteostasis dysfunction, or loss of protein folding, misfolded proteins, is they have a tendency to drive something called TGFB1. This is a particular protein chemical in the body which promotes fibrosis, or what they generally tell people, they have stiffness of the heart or stiffness of the joints. Because do you get fibrosis in your bone and your joints and cartilage? Yes, you do. Matter of fact, that's the only place fibrosis occurs in reality, is in the ECM. It significantly contributes to mitochondrial dysfunction. This is loss of proteostasis. This is misfolded protein damage. It will accumulate within the mitochondria. And so if you're doing, okay, doc, well, we are your clientele, we want you to do mitocon, we want you to do NADH. That's great. And particularly if you test it and they need it. But are those mitochondria and are those NAD levels going to come up if you have severe proteostasis occurring because you have deficient autophagy, which would be the number one related cause, and or AGE formation or cellular succinates, and the list goes on. So please take this, put this in your files in your brain and think about it. And again, I'm not anti-stem cells. I'm not anti-peptides. I'm about making sure we're looking at the whole picture too, so we maximize the benefits from those things. So again, loss of proteostasis plays a huge role. And most people, when you think of most practitioners, when they think of loss of proteostasis or misfolded proteins, they think of Alzheimer's, they think of Parkinson's, they think of dementia and brain issues. But it also promotes, plays a significant role. And again, these words don't come from me, they come from the research, significant role in the development and the progression of fibrosis. Okay. In other words, it's like excessive scar tissue formation. All right. So it leads to that. So that's a huge deal. And again, this helps clean it out and it removes damaged organelles. So again, this disruption affects the brain, the nervous system, the heart, and many other health conditions, which you'll get into shortly here. And again, causes many, many chronic diseases. You know, I mean, I wonder sometimes when we're all trying to do the best we can with our patients, clientele, is if we're missing some of this stuff, how are we really going to get them across the finish line? So I unfortunately, knowledge is power, but knowledge also makes you realize there's not just one answer to the whole picture. You have to look at the whole picture. And again, you do understand if you're wanting to improve mitochondrial dysfunction, you have to consider loss of proteostasis, misfolded proteins. You have to consider you probably have in some organ or tissue autophagy dysfunction or deficiency, probably high AGE in that particular tissue, and maybe cellular sustenance as well as some of the other factors. Proteostasis takes center stage in pulmonary fibrosis. So we all know, we probably have all heard of pulmonary fibrosis. You know, this is literally referred to sometimes as just scarring in the lungs, but it's actually fibrosis. Cardiac proteostasis in obesity and cardiovascular disease. So they know that misfolded proteins and cardiac tissue is occurring and it's being associated with obesity. That means this is happening when people are way overweight and it's contributing to more obesity. And we're talking about now, and I don't remember the exact figure, so I'm not going to quote a number, but we're talking about a very high percentage of children that are now considered obese. It's much higher than maybe we all think, but it's high, or at least overweight. And again, when you think proteostasis or misfolded proteins, proteostasis is folded proteins. Loss of proteostasis is misfolded. Think autophagy. Misfolded proteins or loss of proteostasis, autophagy. Cystic fibrotic lung disease. Again, there's every organ and system in the body associated with this loss of autophagy, and misfolded proteins can become fibrotic, and that's a part of it. Also cellular sustenance, which we've talked about in other talks. Metabolic cardiomyopathy. So, I mean, cardiomyopathy is becoming more and more prevalent just because of the loss of proteostasis. And loss of proteostasis is chronic poor autophagy for probably many years. Aging stem cells, again, loss of proteostasis, again, stem cells. You got to have healthy autophagy if you want healthy stem cells, healthy heart cells, healthy kidney cells. So we know autophagy plays a huge role in helping to prevent loss of proteostasis or misfolded proteins. We know that autophagy cleans up. We've known for quite some time. Majority of us, if we probably did a survey here, would say, oh yeah, autophagy helps clean all the damaged garbage up in the cells so that they're not damaged as quickly or more effectively. I mean, so they can function more healthier longer. Exercise improves autophagy, typically requires a minimum of 30 minutes, and it doesn't have to be, it can be moderate to intense. Sirtuins. So I did a sirtuin talk 4 years ago, I believe. Sirtuin 1, 3, and 6 activate autophagy. If you haven't, or you don't recall the sirtuin seminar, the presentation I did, Dr. Kim has it in his website. Sirtuins are amazing. They are the I call them the health engineers of the cell because they regulate things like autophagy and so many other things. If you watch that video, uh, they're huge. And sirtuin 1, 3, and 6. I don't have 3 in this slide, but it also activates and plays a role in enhancing autophagy. And Dr. Kim has a sirtuin formula, which I use a lot and I love it. And I've had a lot of positive feedback from a lot of our clients on how much it's changed everything from neuropathy to neuropathy is a big one that sirtuin formula helps, or at least I've had that experience, I should say. Clotho also stimulates autophagy. So if you have low clotho, you can have low autophagy. If you have low sirtuin 1, 3, or 6, you could have low autophagy. If you have low autophagy, we've already talked about what that means. So you have a clotho product. This is why you have to look at the bigger picture if you're going to really cross the finish line on some of these chronic, severe health issues. Fasting also helps trigger autophagy. Exercise, we mentioned. Keto diets are beneficial, also with activating autophagy. And here is the product. So it's an autophagy activator as far as I'm concerned, but that's the word. It comes in a liquid, and I use the capsules because we're a lot, but I will use the liquids because depending on the person's age. So I use these products in young people too, because like we talked about earlier, young people have deficient autophagy just because they nowadays have been abused by the sugar, the chemicals, the toxins. You know, they're overweight and everything else, and they're eating Hot Pockets and, you know, I don't know, some of this other garbage they feed them for breakfast and then drive through McDonald's. And then, you know, it's just, I don't know. I know we really have to do a lot to make a huge difference for our children, for them to have a future. And I don't know how many of you on this call can testify. I am seeing a much higher rate of infertility and miscarriages. And I think it all boils down to the combination of all these things we've been talking about that's doing so much damage to the reproductive system. But that's just my opinion. So a lot of times I'll use the AGE with the autophagy product because I'll find they have low or high AGE levels. So if they got high AGE levels, they're downregulating autophagy, as we already know. And also I might use clotho, I might use sirtuin. So I would test those. That's what we do. Because I think you got to use a combination of those things. And I know people go, well, what about detoxifying the toxin? You still have to do that. So it's not that you still don't address all the chemicals, toxins, bacteria, fungus, mold on that, but you have to do this part, even if you wait and do this part in stage 2, which to me is stage 2 is tissue repair and healing, then do it then. But try to get through the first part quick as you can so that you can get something done, because we don't always have the benefit of people that haven't had these problems. They've had them for a long, long period of time. So time is of essence in many instances. So are there times I'll have people doing their detox while they're doing these? Of course I do, depending on where they are in life and with age and with health issues. So these are great. And we're thrilled to death. We have a lot of success with them. We have a lot of positive feedback as well. But we're going to get into the ECM and how it relates to AGE, how autophagy relates to ECM. And you also see Dr. Kim's new product. I want to emphasize to all of you, this isn't just another collagen product. I will repeat that. Not another collagen product. It goes on a much deeper level, on a extracellular matrix level, because that's what you really need to make any significant difference on the ECM level. So the ECM, which is the extracellular matrix, has everything to do with more than just holding your organs in place and your ligaments healthy and your cartilage and everything else. They are big in the shape of cells. They play a role in cell proliferation, cell migration, cell differentiation, cell shape, cell survival, apoptosis, cell death. The extracellular matrix is all the space, including interstitial fluid, including structured waters in the ECM. A lot of minerals are in the ECM. Actually, it is recognized by some authorities as an electronic network of communication to other cells and other parts of the body via biophotons. And I don't want to jump off on that subject, or we'll have another 92-hour conversation. So the ECM's purpose and function, it allows cell-to-cell communication. So, for example, you have, and one of the things best way I explain this to our clients is, think about your thyroid gland or your liver or heart. You have all these heart cells or liver cells. What prevents them from just floating off into another part of the body? It's the ECM, is this lattice network that holds organs and tissues together and in place, which also includes the thing that everybody thinks about or talks about related to ECM is cartilage, ligaments, bone structure. But even other tissues is important. So cell-to-cell communication is done across the ECM. I want to give credit to Dr. Oshman because I got a couple of his pictures in here and they're really good. And the ECM is referred to as a ground substance and it plays a role, and he documents, he has a very good book, and he said, this is the whole premise and foundation of why acupuncture works. It is stimulating the specific network of electrical systems that are communicated to different cells across the body and through the body through the ECM. And it conducts electricity. Now they're saying what it conducts is both piezoelectric properties and collagen fibers, which collagen fibers have these piezoelectric properties, and also biophotons, which we'll get into a little bit. So it all plays a big role in communication throughout the body and through cell to cell. It's a good book, by the way. You guys want to read it. Great book. And this includes fascia. And this is why a lot of body workers can get really good results, because they're playing a role in affecting the ECM and helping to move this liquid crystalline nature that's kind of like a combination of a thick liquid goo that is in crystalline in nature, and there's electrical impulses that travel across it. This picture came from Dr. Oshman, and this is a great picture because it shows you how they're called centrals and microtubules, go from the ECM inside the cell and then inside the mitochondria and then inside and connect to the DNA. So it shows you how the DNA communicates via the ECM, but if you want more detail, the centrioles and the microtubules that go out from that. There's a picture of the ECM. Now, here's what I think is cool. Doesn't mean what everybody else thinks is cool. So see the kind of oval shaped dots in there? That's the cells. So that could be thyroid cells or liver cells or kidney cells. All the rest of that is a part of the extracellular matrix. So in my mind, I pictured it being not as overwhelming. I pictured cells taking up a whole lot more space and the ECM being there, but not to the degree this picture shows you, that if you look at this, cells appear to be spaced pretty far apart. and the whole area is more or less dominated by the ECM. For example, you can see about 25 to 30 cells scattered throughout this ECM. I thought that was a fascinating slide. So, the ECM is made up of lots of things: glycoproteins, collagen fibers, protoglycans, fibronectin, laminin, and the list, there's a huge list of it. Minerals, a form of structured water, and the list goes on. Now, the first time I saw this, I was kind of shocked. I mean, to the point is, oh, that really can't be true. So, you know, when you see something that you find very interesting, but you're not totally sold on it being maybe accurate, you kind of put it in the back of your mind and said, okay, well, if I see this pop up again and again in other resources, then I'll buy into it. But this is information that comes from the National Library of Medicine. Fibrosis attributes to 45% of all deaths worldwide, and that includes the United States. 45% of all deaths in the United States. So we're talking about, you don't hear this, or at least I haven't heard this. I only found this because I was doing deep dive down the rabbit hole research for months on this stuff. That's how I found it. And then once I found it, I had to go really validate, is this really accurate? So that's huge. I mean, because who's talking about this stuff, you know? So are you going to inject stem cells in fibrosis? Extracellular matrix is not made up of cells. The ECM is not made up of cells. It has tissue cells in it, but the actual ECM itself is not made up of cells. I mean, I think this is huge. So what can become fibrotic? Here's a list of a few things. So you have people with intestinal problems and digestive problems. Guess what? It could be fibrotic. And to what degree is the question. Skin becomes fibrotic. Well, obviously, that's more easy seen. Liver becomes fibrotic. You're probably familiar with that. Lungs do. Kidneys do. Heart. Generally, what they'll tell a person with fibrosis of the heart is your heart's just getting real stiff. Bone marrow becomes fibrotic. Well, if bone marrow's becoming fibrotic, what does bone marrow make? Bone marrow makes red blood cells, makes stem cells too. Well, if it becomes fibrotic, you're not going to be pumping out a lot of great RBCs and stem cells and everything else. So this slide itself, I have available for our clients to see if we're having this conversation about this subject, because most people are actually, most doctors I've talked to just glaze over the idea of the word fibrosis as not being part of. This has got to be, if we're all talking about we're in the anti-aging world and the longevity world, you got to be talking about this stuff. You have to be, because the ECM plays such a big role and has such a big impact on health of any tissues. So obviously the ECM, once it becomes fibrotic, you lose organ function, because the cells are embedded in this matrix. And if it all becomes stiff, in other words, it turns from a fluid into concrete, and that's an exaggeration, please. But you get my point. Everything diminishes in function. So whether we're talking about the heart, the intestine, so it's like, okay, so let's, for example, and I made this conversation at the presentation I did the year before, where if you had succinate cells, which are heart cells, liver cells, kidney cells, in an organ, and it was significant number of succinate cells, and I'm just going to hypothetically say the heart, and it had 25% succinate cells, and it had 30% fibrosis, it's going to be a tough gig for you to really turn something around without addressing this. Now, the good news is, as you'll see in the studies that I found, they're showing there is reversibility of fibrosis, and particularly the sooner you catch it, the better chances that even happens, and even with natural products. So again, organ fibrosis is the excessive accumulation of the ECM becoming stiff and damaged, which include conditions like heart failure, chronic kidney disease, liver cirrhosis, pulmonary fibrosis. I showed you the list, and it goes on and on and on. So gut, you're, leaky gut. Well, let me tell you something. Who cares about leaky gut if you got a fibrotic organ and then you add cellular sustenance on top of it? You could be beating your head in the wall trying to work on repairing those cell membranes to put out the fire. But if this stuff exists, and again, typically not in a child, early adult, it starts. AGEs start at a very early. If you looked at the statistics on that AGE seminar presentation I did. So I just can't help. I mean, when I hear all these docs that are speaking at these seminars, that's why I go out of the country more and get my education. Talking about longevity, I go with a scientist because they're giving me more information that I know I can use. Because when you're talking about, leaky gut, okay, is it a problem? Of course it's a problem. But if you got this stuff going on, do you think you can heal leaky gut? If you got fibrosis of the intestinal ECM, if you got succinate cells of the ECM, I think it's all, I'm not going to tell you what I think. I might use a word that I regret. I can get riled up when we talk about this stuff because I don't hear that much communication going on about it. And from all the so-called authorities across the country that are leading these seminars. So I'm okay if they hear this from me because I have spent hundreds of hours researching this and I got the data from a scientific community to back it up. So TGFB1, so that is the gene that causes overexpression of fibrotic tissues in the ECM because fibrosis only occurs in the ECM. So again, autoimmune diseases. So these are autoimmune diseases that are associated with damage to the ECM. How many of us thought, okay, we got a rheumatoid arthritis person. We need to work on down-regulating the inflammation again. As if it's TH1 or TH2, and right off the top of my head, I think it's TH1 dominant, but not 100%. Well, guess what? The ECM involved, you got to address it, folks. I'm sorry. I just don't buy into any other conversation out there. And all of it, and some of us has been in this long enough, and I may be crossing lines here, but some of us have been in this long enough, know how everything goes. So there's hot topics that start out, build up, and then cool off. They have about a 5-year time span. So leaky gut, big deal, big deal. Is it an underlying cause? It's not a cause. It's an effect. Something causes leaky gut. So, and I'm just beating on that one tonight. I could go off on a whole lot of others. Please look at this stuff, consider it, test for it, figure it out. If anybody wants to have a conversation with me, I'm more than happy to. But I think it's critical if you're going to make changes. And I've seen what the changes it's made in our office. And our office gets people from all over the country, and they'll fly down to our office and spend 3 weeks. And I have one person who's been here for 4 weeks, going on 5 weeks, with some serious issues like we're talking about tonight, and doing much better, by the way. So again, last year we talked about galactin-3. Galactin-3 is another because it activates TGFB1, but it plays a huge role in fibrosis. Galactin-3 plays a big role in promoting inflammation. Galactin-3 plays a big role in a lot of chronic disease processes. And we all know that has a lot of PubMed documented studies down-regulates galactin-3, right? And the answer is modified citrus factor. And Dr. Kim's product, MCP-F, is what you can use to downregulate galactin-3. And I know I kind of threw this in off the cuff, so you're probably wondering, what the heck is galactin-3 now? TGF-B1 is a master regulator of aging-associated tissue fibrosis. You can find studies and studies and studies and studies on PubMed on how TGF-B1 is. If you got high TGF-B1, by the way, when I was talking to this medical doctor at that hacking conference, you know, right now you can't measure TGF-B1 at your local Quest or LabCorp. They don't have it. So you have to do it other ways. And some of you out there that do things like muscle testing could, or there's other ways to do it too. So, but anyway, you can't have, I mean, TGF-B1, as you're going to see, is a driver of stimulating fibrosis. Galactin-3 activates it, as I just shortly mentioned. And if you degrade excess collagen and other ECM, if the autophagy is critical for inhibiting fibrosis. Autophagy helps downregulate TGF-B1, always leads to fibrosis. Galactin-3 is extensive studies showing you there's always elevated galactin-3 level, not always, 90% of the time or 87% of the time there's high galactin-3 levels involved in fibrosis. This isn't stuff, if most of you have heard this conversation about galactin-3, I would be surprised. I finally heard a medical doctor talking about galactin-3 about 6 months ago. We did the presentation on this almost 2 years ago. Galactin-3 is big. MCP-F is big if you're trying to make a difference with your clients that either probable or do have fibrotic or ECM extensive damage. In cancer, galactin-3 facilitates tumor growth, right? Metastasis. And again, as I mentioned earlier, several studies on PubMed shows you modified citrus pectin does inhibit galactin-3 levels. Again, this is reiterating the benefits of MCP. And again, MCP, I will tell you, modified citrus pectin is not just ground up orange pectin, or it's not just, unfortunately, modified citrus pectin is microscopically, I think, and Dr. Kim can correct me at the end of this talk, like several thousand times smaller molecules than regular pectin. And the reason why is regular pectin is so large, it doesn't cross the gut membrane, and therefore it's not absorbed easily. Is it beneficial for the gut lining and things like leaky gut? On the surface, it is. But it's not going to get inside the body and go where it needs to go to help downregulate galactin-3. Next slide. And there's the MCP-F product, and he made it so it actually tastes good, which my clientele always like that. And he's got a combination of prebiotics in with it, which I think that even makes this a home run, because I know I'm over a little bit, but I think this is important. So prebiotics can be maybe more important than probiotics, because if prebiotics are your soil, probiotics are your plant. You got dead soil, plants die anyway. And then working on the ECM level, you have this new product of his, which works great, and particularly if you're using it in combination with autophagy, if that's what you need. And again, we test, we don't guess. So, you know, Sirtuin, Clotho, there's a combination of things we generally do, particularly for getting chronic serious health issues. I don't know how else you do it otherwise. I get a big kick out of these people telling me they use, NNM and NAD for the mitochondria. And it's like, well, have you even got any indication to see what the autophagy level is, to figure out AGE levels?
Dr. Martin actually invited me to answer a couple of questions that he mentioned during his presentation. Number one, I remember that MCP-F. So citrus pectin's been around for a really, really long time in nutrition world. But citrus pectin versus a modified citrus pectin, two different things. Citrus pectin is the molecular size is too big to be effective for this particular purpose, but modified is almost like a nano size. So that it requires very special kind of the grinding procedures with the kind of freezing environment and so on and so forth. So it is much smaller molecular size to answer Dr. Martin's comments or question.